Hello and welcome to this Racing Post Bloodstock Postcast. I'm Martin Stevens. I've got my colleague James Thomas here, and our guest this time around is the young agent Matt Houldsworth. Matt's bought a number of very good horses, probably no better at the moment than Phoenix of Spain. He's not going for the Guineas this weekend, so can you give us an update on him?
Well, first of all, hi Martin, hi James, thanks for having me. So no, unfortunately, he's not going for the Guineas this weekend. He's just taken a little bit longer than we hoped, and you know the Guineas is not a race you want to go there if you're 80 to 90% ready. So he'll most likely go for the Irish Guineas at the end of May. There's still maybe an option for the French Guineas, but that will all be seen in the next week or two, I'd say. So. And
just briefly, can you just remind us how you or why you bought Phoenix of Spain at Book One a few years ago as a yearling?
Well, we bought him. We had an order for a nice colt to hopefully be a classic horse, which is easier said than done for lovely owners, Anne Plummer and Tony Weschler, to go to Charlie Hills, and we saw him quite early on. He was on the first day of Tattersall's Book One, and we saw him very early on in our inspections and just fell in love with him. Initially, we thought he was potentially going to be a bit too big and take a bit too much time, but after a couple more inspections of him, we just thought, well, maybe he was a big horse, but he was very mature for a big horse. And yes, he was big in stature, and but he was more physically developed than a lot of other yearlings. And so we thought that he'd be a nice horse with a bit of scope to go on with, and not just be a 2-year-old as well. And we bought him off very good people in Michael Fitzpatrick, Kilman Foal House Stud, and his often business partner Barry Mann. So we're very pleased to get him.
If we could just take a step back from Phoenix of Spain and sort of, if you could give us a bit of background about how you got into being an agent and your kind of route into the industry.
Well, I suppose to begin with, I was always involved in ponies and pony club, and Dad was a farmer, so I initially started going to a lot of livestock auctions with him, and from quite an early age I really enjoyed the auction scene, and going with Dad and watching him with all his mates bid on livestock, sheep, cattle, and I just really enjoyed the buzz from that. I then did pony club. I went to school with primary school with Sam and Willie Twiston Davis, and the now very famous Chris Hughes of Love Island, who seems to have branched out a lot more into the racing world. We all then thought we were all going to be the next AP McCoy, Ruby Walsh, and Sam has gone on to be a very good jockey, and Willie was for a long time as well before he retired. So I did a bit of point-to-point riding. I wasn't particularly good, much to my mother's dismay. I went and worked in a few trainers' yards, and then I met Geoffrey quite by chance, really. I was doing a bit of bid spotting at Doncaster, Goffs UK now, which came about through Tim Kent, who I knew from the Pony Club, and his brother and his mother, etc. So Tim said, look, we'd like to have you up for the day, do a bit of bid spotting. I thought that was great. Now I'd only just passed my driving test, and I thought, oh, easy, I'll be able to drive up there, and that'd be no problem. Now, bearing in mind it's a good 2.5 hour drive, I'd only just passed my tests, and I remember Mum saying, nope, it's not going to happen. And when you're a 16, 17-year-old boy being told that, it's not ideal. So anyway, that was fine. She said, well, look, we need to find you a lift. So she gets the directory out, but quite by chance finds a local number, which happened to be Geoffrey's number. So she rings, I didn't, she rings Geoffrey, gets hold of Geoffrey's wife, Wendy, and they just come back from a holiday in Cornwall, and he'd be delighted to take you up to give you a lift to Doncaster. So we met in the car park the next day at Tesco's in Still in the World, and apparently I never drew breath the whole way up to Doncaster, according to Geoffrey.
I'm not sure we explained that actually, but Geoffrey is your esteemed colleague in Houldston and Houldsworth Bloodstock, Geoffrey Howson, who's been an agent for quite a long time. He's mentored quite a few people in the bloodstock industry, I think.
He has, yeah.
What qualities do you learn from him? What knowledge does he impart to you?
First of all, he's had some very good people go through his hands, and David Redvers is probably the most famous of them, and then Nancy Sexton as well. That's, yeah. But then there's myself. So and obviously one or two others along the way. I think what I've gained so much from Geoffrey is he's willing to impart with his knowledge so freely.
Yeah.
And give you a chance, let you find your own feet Whereas I think some other, I might be speaking out of turn, but I think you can go and work for other agents or agencies, and you're just on the ground floor. You're there as the T-boy. You're there you know, whereas
horses pulled out.
Exactly. Whereas Jeffrey's very keen to let you learn from the get-go, really, and see if you're actually any good or not. That's the only way of doing it.
I mean, before you got a lift with Jeffrey to Doncaster, has been a Bloodstock agent something you?
No, never. It's not something when you're sat at school and you're talking to your UCAS rep or your careers advisor, and everyone else is saying they want to become a doctor or a lawyer or something, and you go, I want to become a Bloodstock agent. It's not something that you go, oh, that's what I want to become. I just fell into it, and a process of things happened that created the opportunity to become one, I suppose. So.
And then you became partners in the agency formally about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, so I've been working for Jeffrey for, I suppose it would be nearly 8 years. And he was always very good. You know, I worked for him, but it was very much a team effort. And then as of the last couple of years, he suggested through a few other people that we should change the Jeffrey Howson Bloodstock to Howson and Houldsworth Bloodstock, which was very good of him. You know, he's been Jeffrey Howson for well over 40 years. And for him to do that was a huge, showed a huge amount of faith in me, I think. Which, you know, it was great at the time, and it really launched me as an independent as well. And then as of the last few months, I've taken over the whole running of the business, and Jeffrey's still very much involved, but he's just taken a very small step back.
Yeah. And how's he finding that? Because I guess he's used to being hands-on, and
I think he's finding it quite difficult, but at the same time, not a huge amount has changed. You know, we're still busy, and we're still doing exactly the same, you know, that we always have. He just doesn't need to go to every gig now, because I've taken over doing that. So he's probably quite relieved he doesn't have to go to every single sale. So.
And so we spoke about Phoenix of Spain there. Can you regale us with a few other of your top purchases?
I think early on, Quiet Reflection was one that really got our name in the big time again. We obviously signed for as a yearling on behalf of Tom Whitehead's Pass Down stud, with the intention of breezing her, and she did breeze. Not a huge amount of money was made when she was sold, which is quite often the case with some of these good horses and good stories. And then she was bought by the BBA Ireland, Carl Burke, on behalf of Carl onto a winner, and Hubert Streck, and the rest is history, really. She's a dual Group 1 winner. So and at the time, by showcasing, I think it was his first Group 1 winner, I think. So and ever since then, showcasing hasn't really, his momentum is just
harder to buy.
Gathered, and so it was great to be a part of the whole thing from an early stage.
And so we often think about Bloodstock agents as working on the day of the sales, but I guess you're working all year round, aren't you? Because you've said before you're a bit of a racing nerd. You'll be studying every result, I guess, looking for female relations to winners or promising horses. Can you tell us a bit more about that part of being a Bloodstock agent?
Well, there's no we don't just go to the yearling sales and stick a hand up and buy yearlings. There's so many other things that go on. That we buy foals, we buy horses in training. Like you said, we buy fillies who might be a half or full sister to something good that might have won a black type race. We try and buy stallion prospects. So there's a huge array of different aspects to the job. We're quite involved in a lot of trading organisations, and we'd be involved ourselves in a few trading operations as well. I think it's quite important to have a bit of skin in the game. I think it's quite hard getting someone else to impart with their money if you haven't got some investment yourself in the industry and you're aware of the ups and downs. I think it's very, very important to be able to share that with someone. So yes, we'd have a good few foal syndicates, pinhooking syndicates. We typically buy anywhere from 20 to 30 foals a year, which we would retain an interest in quite a few of them. And then we also buy quite a lot of potential breeding fillies with the idea of covering to sell on, to flip on. And that's something I'm in particular very interested in. I think it's a good market if you can hit it right. And I've learned from good people that we work with how the best way of approaching that is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you've got to be slightly ahead of the curve there, and it's something I particularly enjoy.
Yeah. A good example would be when we bumped into each other a few years ago on the Gold Coast
Yes.
in Magic Millions.
Yes.
And you were responsible for buying 2 of the mares selling there.
Yeah.
Privately,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of study and legwork went into buying those, and they sold for good profit. So can you tell us a bit more about how that happened?
So the first year, I can't remember how many years, it must have been 3 or 4 years ago, was a mare called Lady Oracle, who we bought privately out of Germany, off a very small sort of outfit over there for, I can't remember, she was very cheap. I think she was about 20,000 euros. She looked awful when we bought her. The frame was there, but she just didn't look great.
Yeah.
But she had a very good current Australian pedigree.
Yes.
Kementari was just getting going.
Yeah.
Talperion was a good horse. So I bought her for a friend of mine, actually, Shearer Sullivan, and her now husband, Mike, who, you know, they run a very good operation, but it was a huge risk to take at the time. You know, it's a lot of expense flying a horse down there. So she was shipped down, sent to Not a Single Doubt, who, you know, again, was quite an expensive covering to put into her. And then she was sold in full for 400,000, which was just one of those things that we just couldn't have seen it happen.
Yeah.
And then the second one was a mare called, I think she was called Dream in Colour. She was a Frankel mare we bought off Godolphin in the February sales for 75,000.
Yeah.
She was shipped down for clients of Randwick Bloodstocks, Brett Howard's and Steve O'Connor's at the time. And she was covered with Exceed and Excel, and she made 750 last year, which was, again, with no update in the pedigree.
Yeah.
It was a massive result. So, and on the back of that, we bought a good few more to sell down there this coming May as well for a few different people. So,
okay, so we've talked about you a bit there. Maybe now if we widen the discussion into the industry.
Yep.
We're in the middle of the breeze up season. James, you've been reporting on the breeze ups. How do you think it's gone so far?
I think it's probably been okay. I don't think it's been, obviously the catalogues this year are quite a lot smaller than they were last year. I think you were sort of seeing at the early sales last year, clearance rates weren't great. People were struggling to sell on pinhooks. People were struggling to, you know, below the very top tier, people were struggling to sell horses. I think with the smaller catalogues, that's not quite the same. I think Ascot in particular was a lot better this year than it was last year.
Ascot was a really good sale, I think. You know, it might not have been the big highest grossing sale, of course it wasn't, but I think what they've done off the back of they'd admittedly said not a very good sale the year before, they've tightened the numbers up, and it's really created an identity, that sale now.
Yeah.
You know, it's selling or trying to sell sharp early horses with an average of 20 to 25,000, which, you know, it's a good stepping stone. And I think the location's fantastic. You know, someone can easily get in from London, even if they have to fly in. It's relatively local as well for most of Heathrow.
Yeah.
And Doncaster last week I think was a fairly solid sale.
Yeah.
It picked up an awful lot as time went on. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. I mean, again, you know, the top end. I mean, there was a record price of 450,000, which I don't think anyone could have quite foreseen.
No.
No. And I mean, it's something of a truism, isn't it? The top end's always going to be pretty solid. I think when the very best prospects aren't selling,
very hard to predict what's going to make. You know, you just get two people set against each other that want to buy something. So.
Completely.
But that was a lovely result, and it's great for Mick and Sarah there from long ways. Ardo Farm, they're now called, for them to get that result. They've been good friends of ours, and we've got a few bits and pieces with them as well. So there was a lovely result that. So.
I think again another sale that kind of benefited from having less numbers than the previous year.
Massively, yeah, hugely. I think they did it was brave to have it when they had it, you know, quite later on.
Yeah, because they switched it by sort of
in the
2
year.
weeks, didn't they? So.
And as to begin with, the sale started off a bit sticky, and I think a few people were thinking, "Oh no, this isn't." But then towards,
I suspect that was just a quirk of fate. And
like with a lot of sales, I think sometimes they do take a bit of time to pick a bit of momentum up, and as soon as one hits the mark, and everything else seemed to flow into place quite nicely. So
the Tats Craven market, that was dominated by Sheikh Mohammed expenditure. What did you make of that?
It was. I mean, it appears to be dominated, and of course it was dominated because he signed for most of the top lots. But all of those had underbidders who were trying to buy as well. So if they hadn't have bought them, then there would have been potentially 3, 4, 5 other buyers at that sale. So yes, it was great that they came and spent, but I wouldn't look at it purely upon a Godolphin one show. I don't think that was the case.
And do you think there are still any improvements that can be made for next year's round of Breeze Up sales?
I think they're doing all they can. I think what the Craven sale have done very well with the new 15,000 bonus. I think that's brilliant. You know, that's another thing that's added to, you know, an owner's incentive to try and buy a racehorse. You know, you could, technically speaking, you could have gone to that Craven sale if one of the yearlings had been bought at book 1. That's a 25,000 bonus. If they're plus 10 registered, that's another 10 grand. And then the Craven bonus, another 15. So if you win a maiden, that's 50,000 on top of that. Pays for potentially 2 years training fees or a bit of the expenditure of the horse, and that can only be seen as a good thing. So
did you buy many this? Have you bought many this Breeze Up season?
We never buy a huge number of Breeze Up horses anyway. We have bought 2 so far.
Really?
Bought one at the Ascot sale, a Cable Bay, for 55,000 for George Margison, for the Guest family, and then at the last sale at Doncaster, bought a Caraconti off Johnny Collins for 45,000 for Roger Teal.
Roger Teal, yeah.
So yeah, but we're never too busy at the Breeze Ups.
No, and have you had any involvement in the pinhooks themselves?
Yes,
they been working out okay?
Okay, not as good as years gone by, but they're making money. And they're being sold, which is the most important thing. There's not many coming home, which is always a good thing. But no, generally speaking, pretty good. And there's still obviously the Guineas sale next week in France and Goresbridge, and it's amazing how many sales there actually are. So there's still three sales to go. I'd be quite looking forward to France, although we might not be going with a big buying capacity. I just get the feeling that that's going to be a very good sale.
On paper, at least, there's a lot of interest in pedigrees there, isn't there?
Yes, very much so.
The sense amongst people seems to be that that's going to be the real kind of highlight of the Breeze Up season.
And it seems like a lot of the vendors have targeted that sale with some of their potentially better horses as well. I think I don't know the stats, but I think after last year's results have been very good on the track. There's an awful lot of very good horses with a huge amount of potential going forward, and as a result of that, I think people want to focus on buying that.
I mean, as an agent, how much attention do you pay to kind of particular sales results, or would you?
Quite a lot. It's not something I sit down and focus a huge amount on, but this is an industry where it's information driven. So you have to listen to as much information as out there, and if you hear that one sale is doing better than the other, well, the chances are you want to try and buy from there, because then you're going to get a better chance of potentially buying a better racehorse. So.
Okay. But you look at it on the flip side as well, and when you see a sale which is maybe underperforming for vendors, do you then as a buyer think, crumbs, there must be good value there?
Bit of value. Again, everything, it's like in every aspect of buying horses for people, it comes down to your budget and what you've got to buy. You know, we can all go to a sale and say, that's lovely, this is great, that breeds well, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what your budget is. And you've got to then work all the factors into that. So yes, if there was a sale that I thought had nice horses in it, and I'd spoken to some of the vendors before the sale, then yes, I would target that.
And any other industry beefs you have at the moment? How do you find the state of production numbers, for example? Is that a thing you would have an opinion on, or do you just focus on your buying?
It's quite a touchy subject with a lot of people. I think everyone has a different opinion. But yeah, of course, it's very easy to say, yes, there's overproduction, there's too much of that. But there can never be too much of a good thing. So if you know, at the top end, I don't think there's a problem with if you want to breed to a very good stallion and the stud farm is very happy with covering as many mares, then that can't be a bad thing, because that's what people want. The market has shown that people want nice horses with nice pedigrees that, you know, tick every box. I suppose the problem is that you can't say to an individual breeder, you can't breed that mare to this particular stallion, because it's a free market. And if that was the case, they'd just go to another stallion. So it's very, very difficult. And the trouble is, no one knows where a good horse is ever going to come from.
No.
A good horse has come from anywhere. It's very hard to police it almost.
No, I think you're right. It comes down to the individual breeder's choice, doesn't it?
It does. And I think gradually what will happen, what probably will happen, is a lot of those, sadly, some of those smaller breeders who are breeding on a much smaller budget and have mares who may not have as good a pedigree, financially they just won't be able to probably continue.
No.
Which is sad in a way, because we just never know where the next good horse is going to come from.
No, exactly. I suppose if the market's cyclical, they'll be back maybe in a few years, or other breeders, other small breeders will pop up, I guess. But it is sad to lose people, especially I always think, you know, we think of the horses commodities, but these small breeders will have put so much time and effort and love really into raising those horses.
Well, it's a lifestyle, it's a hobby almost as well, and any financial gain out of it is great, but at the same time they've got to make money. You can't just throw money at it and be losing money every season. So
no, quite.
But no, it'd be sad. It'd be sad because, like I said, you just don't know where a good horse is going to come from. But yes, are there too many horses? It's easy to say yes, there are. There's probably too many horses with agents and trainers find hard to make a case for. It's hard looking at a pedigree that's got nothing of much worth in it and buy a stallion that hasn't really worked. It's hard to go and buy it. It's very hard. Whereas it's very easy to go and buy something that's perceived as being very good and very fashionable, because it's easy to sell on to the next man, to the owner that you might have to be buying for.
Exactly. That's an important part of being a bloodstock agent. We probably sometimes forget that you have to justify your purchases to someone who's entrusted 10 or hundreds of thousands of pounds to you to find the right.
You've got to be happy with owning it as well. If that person doesn't want it in the end as well, so you've got to be
stand behind it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's very, very, very. I can understand. You know, you've got to really like what you're buying, and it's very hard to say to someone, well, let's go and buy this. Let's buy technically a stallion that hasn't worked with a bad pedigree. You know, you might as well go and buy something that's in.
Even if you like the physical.
Even if you like the physical. No, I think there's some very, very good stories of people buying lovely physicals by strange stallions who haven't worked with no pedigrees, and that's great. In fairness, Quiet Reflection, although she was out of quite a good mare, she didn't have a massive pedigree.
No.
And she was by Showcasing, who at the time wasn't nothing near where he is now. So that's a very good example of one that, you know, they don't have to come from a big swanky hotel with a big pedigree and buy a good stallion to go and be a Group 1 winner. So that's probably quite a good example there.
And do you find when you're in the agency or working with Jeffrey, do you have contrasting opinions about things? Because Jeffrey's has more experience and is from a different generation and may have a different outlook on things. Do you clash or do you complement each other?
Well, I think with any working relationship, we're not going to agree on everything. But the one thing that I think he'd say is that we agree quite often, which is why we've worked so well together for so long. He's a lot quieter, lets me sort of talk all the rubbish, and then at the end goes, no, Matt, that you know. But he'll never say to me, you were wrong. You know, he'll quietly go about it and work it out his own way. But no, he's seen generations and generations of families, whereas I haven't.
Right,
So I might look at let's say a yearling and go, oh, I think that's too small, Jeffrey, and he'll go, no, but the whole family was small, and they were all good. Or vice versa, they were too big or too slow, or whatever it might be. But no, of course we disagree on lots of things, but I think most of the time we agree when it comes down to it. And we now, between us, we own quite a few bits and pieces together, trading stock, and again, he always lets me go ahead and get on with it. And if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, he's never one to point the finger and go, Matt, why did you do that? Which is it's quite a hard thing to do. It's very easy to blame everyone, but he's always stood by whatever I've done.
Right, so we've sorted out the industry. Now we're going to try and sort out the Guineas at the weekend. We're going to call upon your brains to find a winner in an open renewal of the Colts Classic. Where do you start? Shall we start with 10 Sovereigns by No Nay Never, a Middle Park Stakes winner? Will he stay?
Well, he's the class act, really, and what he did last year I always got the feeling last year that he probably would stay a bit further than 6. And I got the feeling as well that he was almost learning on the job. I think that's been quite well documented. He had quite a lot of racing quite quickly. And I think he was always learning on the job, and it looks a real classy horse. I think he will stay the mile. I don't think he'll get any further than the mile. But there's a bit of stamina in his pedigree.
Yes.
From what I've looked up, and I do think he'll get the mile.
I like the fact that I think he's one of the few horses who's shown a spark of brilliance in the race at some point in his career. And also, I wouldn't discount him for being by a sprinter in No Nay Never, because No Nay Never might turn out to be an Invincible Spirit or a Pivotal or an Acclamation who is a sprinter who eventually gets stock that stay further than he did.
Yeah, well, some of his stock already have been staying further than sprint distances anyway, which I think is quite a good testament to him as well.
James, will 10 Sovereigns win?
I mean, I agree with what you've said. Given his kind of racing style last year, I would wonder whether, I mean, I think he will stay, but whether he'll prove to be his best at a mile, I'm not 100% sure. I could see him being slightly more about speed than the test the Guineas presents. I mean, on form, obviously, he deserves to be favourite, really. And, you know, Pedigree, there's kind of clues there that suggest he will stay. It'll be interesting to see how well he's trained on. I think there's a few others in there at bigger prices that have interesting claims as well, not least the likes of Advertise, who's obviously got form behind. I mean, you talk about the touch of brilliance that 10 Sovereigns has got. Obviously, the real class act was due to be too darn hot. He's now gone. Advertise wasn't too far behind him. No. The Dewhurst. So
Advertise is a bit of a contradiction. I looked at his pedigree and he's got quite a fast family, but then he was really sticking on at the end of the Dewhurst, wasn't he?
Yeah. And again, obviously by showcasing who we've talked
I'd be I'd be a big fan of Advertise. I actually saw him when they were working Phoenix to Spain on the Rolly Mile. Advertise was after, and I got to have a nice look at him, which was great. And he looked brilliant. He looked like he's really come on over the winter, and he was a good-looking horse last year, but he just seems to have really developed again. And he looked fantastic. He looked very fit, and I think he's a bit overpriced, and I think he'll run very well. Frankie rides him, I think, as well, from all accounts. So
it's an interesting year, kind of from a pedigree point of view, in that the likes of Galileo and Dubarwi aren't as heavily represented as we've maybe been used to, and that there's actually a few sort of, with the exception of Invincible Spirit, obviously Magna Grecia, there's a few kind of younger stallions there who are on the up.
I thought the most interesting pedigree was actually belonging to Mad Moon, because he's almost precision engineered for the Guineas, because he's by a Guineas winner, Dawn Approach, out of a mare by another Guineas winner, Haft, and Haft was out of Albahathri. Dawn Approach is by New Approach, who was just touched off, and he's from the family of Ortad, I think, isn't he? So
well, it's a good Shadwell
through.
family, and it's a family that Sheikh Hamdan's had for a long time, and Kevin Prendergast has trained for a long time as well. So I think he was so impressive last year in Ireland, and he had that nice turn of pace as well, and it looked like anything he did last year was almost a bonus, and that this year was the focal point. And I think he'll definitely get the mile. It's just whether he'll cope with the track, but who knows? Who knows?
It was an interesting introduction over 7 furlongs, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think visually people probably might have been a bit disappointed that he didn't go and win that. But again, it was over 7 furlongs. It was his first run of the year. And I have
a feeling Kevin Prendergast probably knew what he was doing. He's been around long enough.
I'd say so. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. So it'd be a lovely story. It'd be lovely for him to go and win the Guineas. Yeah, it'd be just a great story, I think.
Yeah, and a good breakthrough for Dawn Approach. He'll probably needs it, to be fair. In this
I wouldn't be. I can't say I wouldn't be a massive fan of his. To be honest, we haven't had a huge amount of luck with him. But at the same time, he's starting to just bang in a few winners now. Yeah, and I don't think he's going to be the next superstar size sensation. But if he can just keep having a few nice winners, that will keep him ticking along. Okay, and if he goes and has a classic winner, that will change the whole picture.
I thought Scardu was a slightly short price for a horse who didn't dazzle in Craven. Is that a stupid thing to say, or?
No, I don't think that's stupid. I mean, he's sort of the unknown quantity coming into it, because we saw a good bit of 10 Sovereigns, we saw a good bit of Magna Grecia, we saw plenty of Advertise. Obviously, Scardu's run twice. He was 33-1 on debut, which doesn't suggest that he was working the house down at William Haggis's. obviously starting price isn't always the be all and end all, but yeah, it's hard to sort of get a handle on him in comparison to the others that we saw running as 2-year-olds last year. Yeah, he probably is a bit of a short price. There's probably a bit of kind of recency bias there that he's run this year, won the Craven, which is obviously a recognised trial of sorts.
Yeah, I think that's quite a thing. Like at least he's run on the track.
Yeah,
he'll get the trip.
Yeah,
and he's going to strip fit, having had a run.
Yeah,
and he's trained by a very, very good trainer who wouldn't. I don't think he'd have him in there if he didn't think he'd be competitive. So. And
finally, we should mention Magna Grecia, the Vertem Futurity winner.
Yes. I remember that quite well because we were second to him with Phoenix of Spain, beating the head, or neck, or whatever it was. So
I assume then, I mean, they finished in a bit of a bunch there.
They did, and I'm quite surprised to see him so short in the betting. So he must be doing something at home that's very good. I know a lot of horses have come out of the Guineas, which is probably a reason why he is as short as he is. But look, he'll stay. He'll get the mile, I think. He was quite impressive actually in the Racing Post Trophy. I think he was, again, I think almost learning on the job again. Like he got there and I think he was looking around a bit. And
so Phoenix of Spain was in the race. Knowing what you do about how he's developed this year and his form last year, what price would you make him in this field?
I suppose around the 16 to 20 to 1 sort of shot.
Really?
Yeah. Just because he's not a talking horse like some of the others might be.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit shorter actually after having talked. I'm just surprised Magna Grecia's as short as he is. It's quite annoying really. You think to yourself it would be lovely to have had it.
We were speaking earlier, weren't we, saying that actually before he was pulled out he was arguably the value shot based on the price Magna Grecia is and how close to him he was at Doncaster, and given that he was sort of 5 or 6 times the price when he was still in the market. But
exactly, it's quite hard to, when you look at that and you think, oh, why?
Yeah.
I didn't quite realise Magna Grecia was going to be as short as that, and when you're only beating a head, in a Group 1 as well over a trip that would.
But then up until so recently, we thought that Too Darn Hot was going to come to the Guineas and destroy them, didn't we? So just briefly before we wrap up, then we'll go to the 1,000 Guineas.
Yep.
Scat Daddy 1-2 in the betting. Do you think it'll be a Scat Daddy Classic winner from his final crop?
I think there's a very high chance. Yes. The filly at the top of the market, Roger Varian's filly, I think that she was very impressive last time in the Nelgwyn. Coming off, I think she'd only had the one run last year, and to come and do that first time up on the track, and to do it in the way she did it, she seemed very effortless. And again, look, she's got the course form. She'll strip fit, and Roger Varian's yards seem to be in great form. And then obviously Skitter Scatter, well, she's the class filly from last year in Ireland, having won the Moy-Glare. It would appear that she should stay. She's bred by brilliant people in Early Stud, and it'd be quite it'd be another nice story, I think. Obviously with now the training partnership of John Ox and Patrick Prendergast, it'd be quite well for you guys anyway to talk about. It'd be a good thing for the press to talk about more than anything. But it would be a nice story. Yeah, it'd be a lovely story, and for the breeders as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good bloodstock story as well with the Scat Daddy angle as well.
Yeah.
Kabbalah has a really interesting pedigree because she's Scat Daddy on top and quite a deep. She wasn't bred by a Juddmonte, but she's from a deep Juddmonte family of flute, and going back to Brian Baru and
those families just keep coming back time and time again.
Absolutely.
Even when Juddmonte sells some of those good or seemingly culls at the mare sales, they're so hard to get your hands on anywhere. And I think a lot of people have done very well buying into those taproot Juddmonte pedigrees.
But I've decided anyway that it'll be Iridessa that wins the Rule of the World. I think she was given a slightly Mad Moon-esque gentle introduction.
Yes, it would appear that way.
And we'll come on for that race. Iridessa, can I have that?
I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, personally speaking, I had a small interest on Just Wonderful quite a long time ago, and I haven't really seen anything to change my opinion too much. I mean, from a pedigree point of view, from a fairly quick family, but out of the Manger mare and by Dan City, I think I don't think staying the trip will be a problem. And
she won the Rockfell last year.
She did, yeah.
Wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, so she was ahead of a couple of fillies that have sort of come out of Frank Reform since. Yeah. But Iridessa is really interesting because obviously we haven't seen a huge amount of Rule of the World's progeny, given that he I think suffered a small injury when he was on his first season covering Guineas, so he's got a fairly small first crop. But I mean, he was from a great family himself and was a really good racehorse, so there's no reason to think that his progeny won't end up being very good, and this filly could be a real flag bearer, I think, couldn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, she's been to the track as well, I think, before, hasn't she?
Yeah.
She'll certainly stay.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think it was quite a nice, quiet introduction in her last sort of prep race. So it wouldn't surprise me.
2,000 guineas and 1,000 guineas winner.
Advertise.
And
Great Scott.
Oh,
the Askins for an each way.
The £2,500 Ascot buyback.
Yes, I just think he's a really tough, hard-knocking horse. He goes to every gig, runs very well.
Yeah, he does run. Yeah,
and there's been a bit of money for him.
Yeah,
and it just wouldn't surprise me if he was running on past a few that perhaps didn't stay.
Yeah, that would be a really good Bloodstock story from Coolmore's budget option.
It would. I just know Advertise and him each, Great Scott each way, and the 1,000 guineas. I quite like the idea of Dandu, who we haven't actually talked about. I think, again, they finished in quite a bit of a clump in the Fred Darling. But I can't really explain why, but I just have it in my head that I could just see David Ellsworth getting another classic winner, and obviously the top two in the betting as well, Skid Scatter. And
well, if we had a Guineas double for Requinto and Dandyman, that would be some for small breeders on.
Dandyman's flying at the moment. Yeah. It's credit to the stud, the Ballyhane and Joey Foley there. I think he's really starting to build a bit of momentum there, and he's obviously upgrading his stock hugely. Yeah. Obviously with Lady Kyra in the race as well, couldn't have been more impressive in her recent trial. Whether she'll get a mile, who knows? But she was very impressive last time anyway.
James, your Guineas winners, female and male?
I'd be in agreement with you on Advertise. I think for a slightly bigger price, Al Hillary's of some interest. I mean, on Pedigree, probably going to want further than a mile, but the fact that they've thrown him in quite late in the days, obviously of interest. And he's by Dubai out of a Group 1 winner. Just purely on Pedigree, there isn't too many better in their better bred than his. The 1,000 guineas, I say, just wonderful. I've nailed my colours to her mask quite a long time ago, and at a bigger price. Antonio de Vega, I think, is interesting. Obviously, Lope de Vega's a stallion who's really sort of coming through, and as we were talking about earlier, could become a really important sire in the next couple of years. And
I think you will.
She won the Prestige Stakes last year, and I think again just a more sporting price. I could see her running well.
I think another nice story could be Fairyland as well.
Yeah,
I think that was lovely last year in the I think it was the Cheveley Park. I think. Yeah. Obviously being owned by Mrs. Stockwell and bred by her daughter in Tally-Ho stud. I think that would be a lovely story.
Absolutely, yep. I'll go for 10 Sovereigns, because I watched back the Middle Park last night and I thought he did it slightly better than I remembered, and Iridessa Nap for the 1,000 guineas.
Yeah, the money's down.
And so when do you think we'll see Phoenix of Spain next?
Most probably the Irish guineas, all going well.
Okay, we'll look forward to it and we'll be in touch, hopefully, if he wins. Thanks for joining us for this podcast, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time.